We're going to start in just about a minute or so. I want to give you a few little words of advice of what the night's going to be about. This is a really, really fun night. This is welcome again to CMC South, the 59th annual conference. So here, let's give it up. For those who don't know me, I am Brian Shay. I teach high school mathematics down in San Diego County, and I am the program chair of this conference, so I'm part of the guys. Yay! I'm one of the many, many, many volunteers who puts on this conference. Just so you know, this entire conference is run by volunteers. Nobody gets paid. We do all this for you, and because we love math and we love kids. So please thank people in green vests and green aprons because they are giving up a lot of time from friends and family and kids to be here. So please thank us when you get a chance when you see us tomorrow. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through 8 amazing fun presentations. They're going to be each time 5 minutes. The slides are going to auto advance and the speakers have no control over that. Once our great MC-ish over there, the lovely and talented Peg Cagle, wave Peg. Peg is an amazing teacher. She teaches high school in LAUSD, bless her heart, and has been around all over the world teaching math and doing math. She's amazing. And so once she pushes play, the presentations go and there's no stopping them. And it's gonna be a great fun night. You're gonna be inspired, you're gonna be challenged, you're gonna laugh a lot, maybe you'll cry a little bit. And also running in the middle over here is the lovely and talented Annie Fetter. Say hi, Annie Fetter. One of the founders of the Math Forum. She's with us doing all the video work, so these will all be online pretty soon, and you could play them again and again and again and make fun of us. And so please have a great fun night. So coming up first is the wonderfully crazy fun Manny Hernandez. Let's bring him on up. While he comes up, I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. This is his first time actually ever attending CMC South, and he's speaking with us for the first time tomorrow. So anybody can do this. You don't need to be a seasoned old vet like me. You could be a brand new young little guy like this guy over here, Manny. He teaches at Castle Park High School in Chula Vista. Come on, Manny, come on up. And so here he is, the amazing Manny. He's been really bad about responding to emails, and so when he got offered to do this, he was like, oh fuck, I guess I gotta say yes to this. And he's totally freaking out. And so he's doing a great job. He's gonna do great. And so he's nervous as heck, as you can see. He's an active alumni of the Latino fraternity, Lambda Theta Phi. He coaches for girls wrestling down at Castle Park High School, so that's pretty awesome. And he also likes to play online chess. And so if you'd love to play chess with him, play chess time with him at Manny LP14. So without further ado, here's the lovely, amazing Manny.
Thank you, thank you. Real quick, I don't know if I heard him right. Did he say Manny Hernandez? It's actually Manny Gutierrez. So, we already started off bad, huh? Like, this is horrible. Yeah, I was forced to do. I promised my students that I was gonna take a selfie. So if everybody can get crazy and get wild. Ready? 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, I like to deliver on my promises with my students because then they'll do their homework. So I didn't know what to talk about, and somebody was bothering me, and so I told them I need you to get out of my face when I was trying to lesson plan. And then I thought about that. When I'm lesson planning, I'm thinking of their needs. What are their needs? I have students with IEPs, they have a lot of needs. Sometimes I think about what I need. So that's like my materials for the lesson itself. There's just so many needs, like the word specifically. I was trying to be inspiring and motivating when it came to this PowerPoint. And then I just got more and more like depressed, I guess, or sad about it. I was thinking about like the needs that are referred to in our community. So like a school that I teach at is considered Title I, low income, a lot of minorities. And then in math, we have the Common Core standards, or the 8-step mathematical practices of Jedi Masters. I'm a big Star Wars geek too, if anybody's interested in talking Star Wars with me. And I promise this is water. This is definitely water. So. Then I just started talking about my district or my site, how we have I have to meet certain pacing guides, kind of mandatory. It's a lot of needs. I'm telling you, I was really trying to do this PowerPoint, or going to my site. I don't even want to talk about those needs at my school. Like, it's very interesting. So, I don't know, can it get worse? Like, I'm barely in my 4th year teaching. I want to do this for a long time. And therefore, when I think about, in my mind, when it comes to teaching, and especially lesson planning, I love lesson planning. I get really detailed and very specific when it comes to my lesson planning. Therefore, I wanted to say, okay, what's necessary? What is a necessary need to maximize my lesson planning? In essence, my teaching. What are the words that are going to come out of my mouth that needs to happen for maximum learning? Oh, I put this for me to remind me that I only got 10 more rounds. I swear. So let's just wait till this one goes to the next one. I'm not going to say another word until the next one goes. Okay. First and foremost, I believe we need to live a healthy lifestyle, and that as long as you know you're trying your best, minimize your own stress, maximize your potential, because my students need us to be as healthy, as happy as possible. I was also thinking, is it possible to support as many students with their needs, with their personal needs, with the materials that I use for mathematics? When they're doing math, am I getting them in-depth learning rather than just covering topics? I'm really hoping that we're transitioning away from covering many materials, and I believe in that. I know we need to fill in many holes, and it might take extra effort, but I want to be proactive about it in filling in these holes when I'm lesson planning, and I think that the extra effort's worth it. So one of the things that I learned, 5 mathematical practices of something, I forgot what book. Anticipation and monitoring. So definitely when you're lesson plan, you want to anticipate. I think that's a normal thing. And then selection and sequence. So those are the 4 of the 5. I totally forgot the 5th one. Don't know what that one is. But I feel like that's an actual need when I'm lesson planning. I need to do that before I start messing around with all these other needs. You do need to understand my train of thoughts all over the place. I think of so many random tangents. Therefore, if I had more time, or if you want, I can explain myself in a thorough conversation and a drink if you want to buy me one. And so, 2 more slides. Yeah, I'm waiting for the next slide. I'm not. It's not even my water. Okay, so in the end, you need to remember that you know your students the best, or you should know by now. So I'm hoping that you did take the time to do that. I'm sure everyone who's here right now do know their students the best. And you need to remember that you know yourself the best, so let's just stay humble and keep doing what we do best, I guess. And that's it.
Thank you, Manny. Great job. Good job. You bring up a good point about needing. You need to know your kids and know yourself. This is sometimes a tiring, crazy job, as you all know. And so getting to know yourself is really important. Take care of yourself. This is really important. Speaking of doing a lot of crazy things, we got Kristen Gray coming up. And so I'm going to talk about Kristen Gray while they swap out microphones. And so Kristen Gray comes from Delaware. She used to teach elementary school. She taught for about 20 or 70 years there. I don't really know. Not really good with numbers. It's not a good career choice, but whatever. And so, but currently she's actually working for Illustrative Mathematics. She is a curriculum director for their new elementary school curriculum. You may not know, but they're in the process of writing a K-5 curriculum for IM, and so she's in charge of all of that curriculum. Poor thing. As she's also a dear friend of mine, and as you're going to learn a little bit about her, she's a girl who can't say no. And so she always is on every committee that I could ever think of. She's agreed to say yes to this. She works for IM. She's on a lot of committees with NCTM, and she's very involved, and she's got great heels on. Good job. And then also, despite these crazy heels, she also ran a 5K with a llama on a leash. I don't understand what that means, but you told me to say that.
No, I have no interesting facts.
You're boring as hell.
That's so boring.
You're terrible. So, here you go. Kristen Gray, everybody.
Thank you so much. I was actually most worried about Brian's introduction of me, so this should be okay from here on. I'm going to ask you for the next minute to pretend you do not know the story of the Three Little Pigs. And I'm going to describe a series of 3 activities to teach you that story. Now, in my planning, I've thought of what I consider to be the really important questions when planning any activity. Does everyone have access to it? Does it encourage engagement, sense-making, discourse, and reasoning? And I think in the case of these 3 activities, it does. So, with that, once upon a time, there were 3 little pigs building houses. Would you rather live in a house made of straw, wood, or brick, and why? Now, if we were in a classroom, I would ask you to turn to your neighbor, defend your choice, and share with the group. Activity 2, the wolf enters the story. I'd like you to put the pig where it belongs, in the food web, and fill in all the other empty boxes with animals that make this open middle food web true. And for our 3rd activity, we're gonna watch Peppa Pig build a house out of bricks. We're gonna watch 14 seconds of it, try and estimate how long it might take Peppa to complete the house, and watch the end of the video to see how close we are. Now, reflecting on those planning questions, I think we would all agree that all 3 of these activities would offer students access, engagement, support, sense-making, discourse, and reasoning. But if I ask you to turn to your neighbor and retell the story of the 3 little pigs, I can imagine you would probably laugh me off this stage because that wouldn't even make sense. It would be confusing, and I imagine it'd be awkward silence and laughter around the room. And I think when I did this with adults, they said things like, I'm not sure what they would have learned. It felt like a forced pseudo real life context, disjointed, felt like the extras that come with a reading series. And each one felt like an isolated experience. And I think those are all true. And I think it's because there's this disconnect between how we think about a mathematical story versus how we think about a story in ELA. And I don't think that should be the case. If we think about an ELA story, such as the 3 little pigs, if we pull any page out of that story, there's events that have led up to that page, and that page, the events on that page are leading to the next set of events. So when we think about the story of multiplication of fractions, and we want students to make sense of 5 times 1/4, there are events that have led up to that moment, and there's understandings that that moment is building toward, that it should all follow a coherent mathematical storyline. So when we think about a tweet that goes out like, starting teaching fractions tomorrow, who's got an activity for multiplying fractions? We can't help but be bombarded with just all the activities, just like the ones we saw in the opening. And then we take all these activities and we tend to filter them by those 5 questions. Do they encourage engagement and sense-making? And I think all of us would agree that some of these do and some of these do not. But when it comes to connecting to the content, that's the hard part because we know the through line. Just like with the 3 little pigs, we could see how those activities connected to the story because we knew the story. And so when we're picking content, we know the story of multiplication of fractions, but the students in our classroom do not. Giving them access to an engaging activity does not guarantee access to the mathematical story, because while they might be successful in that moment, what happens the next day, what happens the next unit, and what happens the next year, they need access to the entire story. So we need to ask ourselves, before any of the others, 2 really important questions. What are students building on? And what are students building toward? Then we ask ourselves all of the other questions, because these questions help build the mathematical story. Eleanor Duckworth said it best, that making connections depends on knowing enough about something in the first place to provide a basis for thinking of other things to do and questions to ask. So if you ask me how to do this, I would say, curriculum, of course, period. But if you don't have one, I encourage you to read the progression document, consider prior grade level standards, think about the mathematical representations that help build that mathematical story in a connected, coherent way for students. And so when we ask ourselves these 2 questions, what are students building on and what are students building toward, our tweets change to be something where we're really giving students the story. And we tweet things such as, I start teaching 4th grade fraction multiplication tomorrow. Students understand multiplication as groups of, can add fractions with like denominators using tape diagrams, and I want to connect it to the number line. And if we tweet something like that, we get activities that give each and every student in our classroom access to the mathematical story.
Great job, Kristen. Now go ahead. That was a great story about stories. So definitely, I think you bring a good point. So we have a lot of those big ideas here. Who would you rather? Hot mic, hot mic, hot mic. Be careful. Watch what you say. Would you rather? That's created by people here. Open middle. That's all. A lot of those ideas are created here in Southern California. We're a great pool of amazing math teachers and innovators. So thank you all for putting those ideas together. Next up is my twin brother, Kendall Brown. Come on up, Kendall Brown. So you all probably know him. He is a SoCal institution. My soul train. All right, so Kendall, back when he was a kid, he used to dance on Soul Train. Give him a few drinks, maybe he'll show you those moves? No, not anymore. Okay, good dancer. He also, his family won Family Feud back in the 80s. Currently, in the modern day, he runs a California Math Project based out of Los Angeles. He's an asset to all of mathematics education in California and the nation, and he's going to tell you a great, great story. So, thank you, Kendall.
All right, thank you. All right, so the purpose of this presentation is to share a small amount of the contributions that people of African descent have made to the field of mathematics. So when I was a student in school, I used to always wonder why there was never any information in the textbooks about Africa or about people of African descent. So I decided that once I graduated from college and began teaching, that I would do my own research and try to find out what I could. So I read books like Blacks in Science, Ancient and Modern, Mathematics in the Time of the Pharaohs, Africa Counts, African Fractals, and more recently, The Crest of the Peacock, The Non-European Roots of Mathematics. And what I found out was that for thousands of years, Africa was in the mainstream of mathematics history. Although all peoples and continents have played a role in the history of mathematics, the contributions of Africa are still unacknowledged by Western historians. We find mathematics in Africa when we look at number systems, counting, currency and exchange, mystical and spiritual beliefs, and art. So we'll start with the Ishango bone, which was discovered in the late 1950s by a Belgian archaeologist in the area of Congo. It was carbon dated to 25,000 years before the present era, making it the oldest mathematical artifact in the world. An examination of the markings on the bone show patterns of doubling, evidence of base 10 understanding, and even evidence of prime numbers. The ancient Egyptians also had a very interesting numeration system that was base 10 and it was additive. The symbols that you see represent all of the different powers of 10 that can be combined to create any number that you wanted to. The ancient Egyptians also had a very interesting method of multiplying by doubling. So if you want to multiply 7 by 13, you'd start with 1 and 13 and continue doubling until you got 7 in the one column and added up the other numbers, and that gave you the product of 7 and 13. Try it out. Ancient Egyptians also had their own system of measurement, including this very interesting measurement called the double Riemann, which was the length of the diagonal of a square whose side was 1 cubit, indicating an understanding of the Pythagorean theorem, before Pythagoras, right? The ancient Egyptians also had a very interesting method of solving equations of the first degree, known as the method of false position, or aha calculus. The Yoruba of Nigeria have a base 20 number system, and so you see the numbers 1 through 10, and then you have 10 plus 1, 10 plus 2, 10 plus 3, 10 plus 4, 10 plus 5, and then it switches to 20 minus 4, 20 minus 3, 20 minus 2, 20 minus 1. The number 35 was 2 20s minus 5. The number 43 was 2 20s plus 3. The number 48 was 3 20s minus 10 minus 2. The number 54 was 3 20s minus 10 plus 4. The Chokwe people of Angola create these beautiful sand drawings called lusona that are examples of Eulerian circuits because they begin and end at the same point and never trace over the same line twice. Now, this legacy continued in the Americas with people like Benjamin Banneker, who was a mathematician, laid out the plans for Washington, D.C., and created his own almanac where he did all of his own calculations. Less well known is Thomas Fuller, known as the Virginia Calculator. He was born in Africa and brought as a slave to the United States. Once upon being asked how many seconds were in a year and a half, he answered in about 2 minutes, 47,304,000. On being asked how many seconds old a man who was 70 years, 17 days, and 12 hours old, he answered 2,210,500,800. When told he was wrong, he said, "Master, you forgot to add the leap year." The first African-American to earn a PhD in mathematics was Elbert Francis Cox. He received his doctorate degree from Cornell University in 1925, and he was the head of the math department at Howard University for 32 years. The first African-American woman to get a PhD in mathematics was Euphemia Lofton Haynes. She earned her doctorate degree from Catholic University in 1943. She taught public schools in DC for 47 years and was the first woman to chair the DC School Board. So it's important that we share this information not only with African-American children, but with all children so that we can eliminate deficit views of African-American students in mathematics. Thank you very much.
It is so important that we infuse this idea of math history and all that we do, because everybody needs to be exposed that math is not just a European white invention, but it's been around for a long time, well before those people were around. And so next up is going to be the amazing Patricia Saucedo. She teaches middle school mathematics. She is on her way up, and the school that she teaches at is actually a Spanish language dual immersion school. So she teaches math in Spanish every day. God, Dios mío. Is that a good use of Spanish? I'm really bad at Spanish, so come on up. Patricia, awesome. And so, because she teaches in Espanol every day, she's going to be hopefully maybe doing a little right now. Maybe, we'll find out. And so her talk is all about circles. So every time she says the word circles, have a drink, everybody. Let's do this. Let's live this up. Every time she says circles, have a drink.
Well, first of all, let me say Feliz Dia de los Muertos. Yes. I'm not at my school today, but today they were having a Day of the Dead celebration, so I'm missing that out, but that's okay. We're celebrating math today. Matemáticas. How can we build an authentic relationship with our students? But I'd like to counter that question with, can we afford not to? And I say the answer to that is the power of circles. Now, the circles have always, mystified us. We encounter circles every day. Look at the rim of your cocktail. Look at the rim of our coffee that we had today, and the donut and the bagel, the ball of the unfortunate Dodger player. Mathematicians and scientists have long been mystified by the circle. Stonehenge, crop circles. My students are mystified when they have to calculate pi. We circumvent the sun. Symbols of of peace, also form the circle. I'm so proud that the UN uses the circle as their logo. Peace, and also other symbols use the circle. When we come together, it makes sense to form a circle. Ubuntu, which is the South African symbol of coming together, means I am what I am because of who we are together. I know in my experience with junior high that when we listen to young people, it makes sense because they're confused and they need to be listened to because of their emotions, their feelings. And if we do that, it brings us together as a community. As we join our energy with those in a circle, we become part of something that's bigger than ourselves. And we do that when we bridge together in a community. Community circles or restorative circles are something that unites us. And even though we have a mathematical community, we need to bridge together something in our classrooms that bring us together in community. The shape of a circle is also very important. Everybody is equal. No, there is no authority figure. We circle up and no one is the boss, but there could be a leader. The purpose of communities are, circles are also important. We build inclusion, we solve problems, and we connect to content, as you'll see later. Goals of community circles. Principals enjoy that reduction in disciplinary actions and reduction in instruction time is important, but what I enjoy the most is that we increase teacher and student morale. It's important that we listen, we have patience, we respect, and we take turns. When kids really buy off on this idea, they accept responsibility, and they also gain confidence, and they become really productive members of the school community and the local community. Let me explain how this starts. We start off by talking about what the purpose of the circle is. We do some work in talking about the questions, and we close up with some checking for understanding. Cornerstones of trust is talking from your heart and also listening from your heart. It's really important that we start building on that trust. Some of the sample questions I do is I start off with something light, like maybe say, hey, what's your favorite taco? I do a community building question, like when was the last time you saw a sad movie? And then a restorative question like, when did you experience something sad? All of that comes together with the discussion points like centered around an emotional, something emotional. And these bring you together to the point of forming a crew, which is what you want to do to bring you together to your ending point here, which is rise by lifting each other up, which is what you're doing to me, right?
All right, so I'm gonna keep up with her saying circle. I only had like 3 swigs of my vodka soda, and then I had to give up. She said circle's too much for me, but maybe you kept up. Next up is Matt Hema. He's gonna talk to you a little bit, but before we do that, I wanna just remind you a little bit about who Matt Hema is. He's been teaching for nearly 20 years, and he teaches elementary school, 3rd grade through 5th grade. He's also an elementary math specialist, and also elementary math methods professor. And also, his wife is also an educator, and she's somewhere over there. There she is, happy wife. And what else? He has 2 daughters, and he actually goes to school with his daughter every day. That's impressive. Good man. So here we go, Matt Hema.
This is a big room. We couldn't get Chino A for this? All right. I started teaching 19 years ago, and when I started teaching, I wanted to see what my students were doing. So naturally, I asked them to show your work. That's what my teachers did when I was a kid. I just thought that's what you're supposed to do as a math teacher. But show your work has a lot of downsides. I lost a lot of kids, and the biggest one that I kept hearing was, I did it in my head. Kids would just tell me, I did it in my head. So my challenge became, how do I get that in their head out? Well, I wanted them to show me their thinking. So I thought, maybe I should ask them that. Show me your thinking. So that started us on, okay, if I want to see what you're actually thinking, I'm going to keep saying, show me your thinking. So just that little tweak got me started. And initially, I started dabbling with problem solving. So I took problems like this, and I asked them to show me how they did it. Through modeling, through coercing, we finally got products that looked a lot better than what I was originally getting. They were labeling their work, they were showing what they're actually thinking as they do either simple problems or complex problems. And that was fantastic. I felt like this was amazing. But eventually, number talks came along. That changed everything. Because now I had a specific way to get them to show their thinking. First, it was through describing what they were thinking. And at first it's painful, but the kids are amazing. They're amazing at the way they can explain what's happening in their brains. And as teacher, the most fun part is getting them to do this. But eventually, they start to do it on their own. They start to show their thinking on their own without me having to take their brain and show it. So we started talking about, okay, have a conversation with your brain. What is your brain thinking? You got it? Okay, write it down. Write it down before you forget, because you're going to show that to people. And this is the kind of things we start getting. I got it from kindergartners, I got it from second graders, and I got it from fourth, fifth, and sixth graders. And it was phenomenal. And you can do this in a lot of different ways. By the way, that's my little daughter. So I took, for example, Greg Tang's Grapes of Math. If you don't have that book, it's phenomenal. But using that with fourth graders. This is her fourth grade classroom. And all the kids got this, and 36 students in there, not one was the same. I took things like 3-act math tasks. Grant Fletcher, wherever you are, thank you. This task was so much fun with second graders. And I asked the teacher to give me samples of work so I could show off. I had way too much. So I just crumpled them together for you. So there's 5 of them. Every kid was thinking differently. And the only thing I asked was, show me your thinking. And they come up with so many different ways. There's other things as well. So next I think is the visual patterns. Yeah, this is fun. So thank you for visual patterns. By the way, if you don't know, we have so much out there. Visual patterns, I started this year with my students, finally connecting it. I teach 6th grade, so I want to connect it to algebra whenever I can. But it's so much fun to see even my lowest students, even the students that say, I hate math, I can't do it. And I just say, just show me what you're doing. Just show me your thinking. Color it if you want. Color makes everything better. This is one of my students who hates math. This is how much she wrote when I asked her, just show me your thinking. Would you rather? This is one of my favorite activities. They die for this. Anytime I put one of these up there, they are talking, and I just do little tweaks when I say, show me your thinking. What are you thinking about? What do you need? What information are we missing? What can I help you with? They start writing notes. They start writing notes about the things that they're thinking in their minds that matter in this. The math, the non-math, whatever it may be. They're really showing what they're thinking. I think the next one is, there's all more. I had so many more to put in, so I just jumbled them all into one slide. Between clothesline math and open middle and estimation 180, every day the kids get an opportunity to show me their thinking. And when we move on to content, they want to go back to this stuff, which is a great thing. So now I have to fix it together. The beauty is I've worked in kindergarten all the way to 8th grade. And show me your thinking works with any age. I can do it with the kindergartners, and I can do it with the 8th graders. I can use technology, or I can use the whiteboard. By the way, that's my niece right in the middle. I get to be in her class. This fits really well with the message that I want to give my students, because I get 6th graders who hate math. Well, you can learn. You can learn math at any age. And I love this you can learn anything hashtag from Khan Academy. It fits in really well with growth mindset. With growth mindset, I'm always trying to get my students to understand you can learn from one another. You can listen to each other. Number talks usually turns into number listening. Because a couple of students talk, other kids go, oh. And you get that light bulb. And finally, my last slide, wow, that went fast. My last slide, these are pictures my daughter draws because I need to get her to do something, and she just steals lines. So one of them the other day, she actually wrote, show me your thinking. So I'm like, oh, that works out. And which one looks like me the most? Oh, they're gone.
That was good.
All right, next up is the incomparable Dena Williams. So this young spring chicken over here, as she saunters her way up, she, oddly enough, she's like 29 years old, yet she just retired from LAUSD. So I don't know how she did that. But she's an amazing, amazing, brilliant thinker. She works with us on our committee here for the conference. She helps organize our elementary strand sessions. She was an elementary school teacher and elementary specialist in LAUSD. She is an expert on equity and social justice and getting all kids to learn math. About a year ago, she was a featured speaker at the NCTM Regional in Chicago. A little more fun things about her, she collects piggy banks. Most of them are not shapes of pigs. And this girl can shop. She has never met an infomercial she did not like. She is on a first name basis with her UPS driver. That's creepy. But here you go, Dena. That's all you.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, let's do it. All right, so what do you think about when you hear the word proof? Evidence or argument, establishing or helping establish a fact or a truth or a statement. You'll be asked to give proof of your identity. I don't care where the hell you were born. Okay, so synonyms for proof are evidence, verification, corroboration, authentication, confirmation, certification, documentation, validation, attestation, substantiation, and proof of ownership or proof of birthright. What do you think about? Okay, we're now moving here. Oh, there we go. What do you think about when you hear the word proof? A trial print of something in particular, like the many times, or 15 times I had to reprint this talk, and because I didn't know I could stand up here without a podium to hide behind. Okay. So what do you, to establish or withstand something damaging. Able to withstand something damaging, resistant, the Marine battle armor was proof against most weapons. Synonyms, restraint, immune from, unaffected, invulnerable, impenetrable. So, when you make fabric waterproof, is to give a resistant quality. So the tent was made of proofed nylon, but the town wasn't. What do you think about when you hear the word proof? My apologies to all the gluten-free people, but bread is one of the best things in life. You have to proof it to make the best bread. All right, so what do you think about when you hear the word proof? And I think that speaks for itself, but alcohol proof in the United States is defined as twice the percentage of alcohol by volume. Consequently, 100 proof whiskey contains 50% alcohol. 86% proof whiskey, it contains 43% alcohol, and the average beer is about 4% alcohol by volume. Okay, how do we use the word proof? Proof is everywhere. Burden of proof, proof reading, living proof, idiot proof, proof of purchase, tamper proof, fireproof, proof beyond a reasonable doubt, baby proof, bulletproof, soundproof, proof positive, body of proof. In this election year, we might be going back to idiot proof. Okay, mathematical proof is this, and it's not proof of without a reasonable preponderance, like, oh, this really changed thinking right there. Okay, so thinking about proof, you go see the shows, LA Law or Law and Order, or How to Get Away with Murder. They have a different burden of proof than mathematics. Okay, here we go. More than math. Teachers have to prepare their students to develop an understanding of content skills, cultivate the process skills, math practices that allow them to apply the content understanding, become effective mathematicians, clear communicators, prophetic politicians, and reasonable global citizens. This is not proof, although my most recent textbook thought this was. Moving on, supporting the learner, the ability to reason systematically and carefully develop when students are encouraged to make conjectures. I always thought the ability to reason and follow an argument was in the highest form of mathematics, and I still do. All right, proof. I saw this movie the other day. Haven't we seen many movies about the brilliant mathematician who loses his mind and has to be brought back by their caring friends? In this one, the daughter also went crazy. And many people said that the movie didn't have enough math in it, but that was probably some of you sitting in the room. Okay, so the standards for MCE and process standards just went by, and I want you to dig them out. They came out in 2000, and they're still relevant today. And keep these other standards close, and the name of these standards were the standards. So Common Core is not to be said anymore, so just cover it up and leave the rest and work on those standards. So when you give students the opportunity to talk to each other and to reason through things, they become very powerful. I had some kids for 4 years. This is the kind of reasoning they did, and they started to tell me things like, you could have done it this way, Mrs. Williams, or it could have been done another way. All right, what do students get when we work and think about proof and having them practice reasoning? We get equity, agency, identity, and power. And then we build mathematically powerful humans and citizens. And this is a picture that I've seen all over. It makes me wonder what kind of people are living here, but I'm thinking they're not really reasoning people. I didn't see any of these around the pool at the Hilton. So, thanks.
Thank you, Dena. Girl, you don't.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we clean up her mess, because she is a mess, I mean that in the most love, Dena. You are a mess, sweetheart. Hot mess, sister. Okay. All right, so on deck right now is going to be the lovely and talented John Berray. Oh, you guys heard of this guy? He's a weird one, let me tell you. And so he is a high school teacher in San Diego County somewhere. He moves around a lot. He said by the time he was like 33, he lived in 18 different places around San Diego County. I think he's like hiding from the feds, so just as a warning, he might hurt you. No, he's good. Oh, he's smiling. He's in a good mood today. He has 2 twin kids, a boy and a girl, named parenthesis and bracket, and no, what is it? Zoe and
Sophie and Noah.
And Noah, maybe something like that. Okay, and so here's John. And what else? He is known around his world in the school district of Grossmont Unified. He's known as the John Berray, which is interesting because I'm often called the Brian Shay, and we rhyme. So here you go. Here's John Berray.
As educators, we have an infinite rainbow of tasks trying to compete for what we put first. In fact, this list is limited and exhausting. Sometimes it can feel that we're on a hamster wheel, doing the same thing day after day, week after week, year after year, possibly even decade after decade. Sometimes we can be so busy on our hamster wheel of school that we can become desensitized to the system we're both perpetuating, and I lost my train of thought. But who's examining the wheel? I have a solution. In 1989, Dr. Stephen Covey wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and his habit 3 is put first thing first. We always have time for things we put first. He goes on to categorize how we spend our time in terms of importance and urgency. I'd like to apply that to education on a grid. In quadrant 1, we have tasks that are both important and urgent. This is where we spend the majority of our lives as teachers, quadrant 1. Our job is to manage and survive quadrant 1. Then we're going to drop down into quadrant 4, excuse me. These tasks are not important, but they're urgent. These are the interruptions. These are the interruptions, right? Our job here is to minimize our time here. Great procedures and policies for your classroom can help do that. Then we go over to quadrant 3, a time suck. We need to avoid time here. Untangling paper clips the day before a school year starts is probably a waste of our time. Then we're going to go up to quadrant 2, our beloved quadrant 2. I argue we spend far too little time here, and this is the basis for our system. This is where the treasure lies. Q2 is where we can strengthen the humanity of our classrooms and our schools. This is where the major shifts in our education can begin. I argue that we need to get here more often than we do. Our students benefit, our teachers benefit, our communities benefit. Who, if not us, are examining the issues of Q2? If not now, when? Who, me? I'm a teacher. We're all collectively responsible for our system. We don't have to wait for WASC to do that, to examine these issues. I'm asking us to insert pauses into the continuity of our years. Notice how it looks like a Roman numeral 2 in the middle? We have to insert these pauses to reflect upon these issues that are dire and more urgent than we think. So I'm advocating that we schedule these pauses once a semester, once a unit, at the end of every school year, to identify and tackle these issues. I'm also asking that we start with the first step of human-centered design and begin with empathy. Let's start by observing the user. Let's start with the student. What might we learn by observing a student's day? Let's trust that her experience is valuable to our understanding of the system. Hopefully you don't think that's a scuba diver. I'm asking us to shadow a student for a day. Take a day, the entire day, and shadow a student. That's the first step. We don't want to go to solutionizing. We need to start with the first step of empathy. This website, shadowstudent.org, outlines a beautiful process to make that a meaningful experience. We need to show more love to Q2. We are the people that need to do that. Most of these issues, most of these tasks are far more important than we could ever think. So my call to action can be summed up this way. Schedule the pauses, identify the human issues, and start with empathy. As leaders of our classrooms, of our schools, and our districts, who, if not us, is looking out for the issues in Q2? I'm asking that we schedule those moments and put first things first. Thank you.
Great job, John. Wow. So I'm going to diverge before our last speaker comes up. So I teach high school, and this year our school has actually made a conscious effort every Tuesday to spend 20 minutes talking with kids about crap like that's really affecting kids and really being vulnerable with kids, with ourselves, opening myself up to my kids in a way I haven't done in 15, 20 years, and it's been really empowering to me as a teacher and to my kids. We've moved into a new space, and it's really exciting, and I think you're hearing a lot of that theme tonight. Here is Princess Choi. I'm upset that there's a second princess on stage right now, because that's really not the way it's supposed to be, but that's okay. So Princess Choi has been speaking here for quite a few years. She's an amazing middle school math teacher. Where are you at? Where is that?
Paris High School.
Paris High School, somewhere down in this crazy inland Riverside County space. She was born in Seoul, Korea. Her family's names are also Princess and Angel. Beautiful names. And what else? She always gets confused for other people. So this is the real princess, and I'm the other real princess. So here's Princess Choi.
Good. So I was at my PLC meeting and I was just hating my life. There are so many things I can do right now at this time instead of being here at this PLC meeting. Well, so then I asked myself, hey, princess, why are you so miserable? Well, there are many reasons why, but if you wanted me to list a few, well, my teacher friends, we talk about how the counseling department doesn't place students right, kids have no grit, parents don't care, there's no discipline at our school, it's so negative. Well, my sister from Korea came to visit me. Her name's Angel. I haven't seen her in 5 years, so we decided to go on a 4-day trip to Grand Canyon. That's my picture that I took over there. We had a great time. It was perfect. The end. Not really. We got into a big fight over cheese sticks. I ate 1 extra cheese sticks. She was really upset because it was after a very tiring 3-hour hike. Well, you see, she felt like I'm the older sister, and older sisters are supposed to be nurturing. And so, I should be giving her that extra slice of pizza, the cheese sticks. Me, I was just Not thinking about anything, because if she wanted it, she'll say something to me, right? Well, feelings were hurt, and so we weren't really talking to each other. It was really awkward, okay? But then, as we were walking, we saw two brothers yelling at the top of their lungs. They were fighting over a camera. We stopped, we looked at each other, we started laughing. And then we sat down and we hashed it out. Right there. That's my picture with that view. So yeah, we're gonna be living happily ever after, her in Korea and me here, okay? So then back to my PLC. Why is it that we are so negative and defensive in our PLC meetings? Well, every single teacher that I met and talked to so far really have pride in what they do, and they really love what they're doing. So why is it that we are so defensive and negative? Wait a minute, could it be that we love our job so much that we spend our personal time and money to support our students? But in return, society, politicians, administrators, and parents come back at us with the wrath of low test results? Did I say that right? Yeah. So well, we are all here today and tomorrow to empower our students in their mathematical journey, right? Well, I have a stinking suspicion that if our professional learning community can work together as a cohesive unit, we might be way more effective. So, today, in front of everybody here, I'm going to make this pledge. First, I'm going to talk to as many people as possible to find out something positive that they are doing. Then, I'm going to go ahead and share it out with as many people as possible with enthusiasm, whether I do it myself or not. And in those situations where I hear something that I disagree with, I'm just going to say to myself, that is very different from how I see it. I wonder why they see it that way. And in those moments when I hear something that's said to me that hurts my feelings or make me feel upset, I'm just going to pause and be super happy, because look, they felt so safe that they were able to communicate how they feel with me. And I feel like if I can do this at a rate of 90% or higher, the positivity bug would multiply itself exponentially, and we will be able to foster that productive, collaborative community in my PLC. So this is where I ask you, would you like to join me in my journey?
Here we go. Thank you, Princess. That's it. That's all 8. Let's get all 8 one more time up here on the board. Come on. Come up on stage. Come on. Get up here. Then this is a hard night for them, so please give them a good applause. Buy them a drink if you can.
Hang on, I got to interrupt for a second. So, if you missed it, Princess 2 here got married last weekend, so he's spending his honeymoon with you. So if you just stand there and face me, and I'll just get a picture of like all of you. So everyone's gonna look crazy, all right? All right? So this is Brian's honeymoon, all right? Here we go, everyone, look wild. Okay, you can have the mic back now, thank you.
All right, bring them on up, everybody. Come on. You guys are great. Give one last round of applause. Dena, Princess, John, Kristen, Kendall, Manny, and Matt, and Patricia. Awesome. Thank you all. Have a great night. Go get drunk.